evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so the board will reconvene from executive session at exactly 7:36. The public has been duly informed of this meeting in accordance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 by posting at least 48 hours in advance a notice to the bulletin boards in Stevenson and Churchill schools, a notice to the township clerk, and a notice to the Passaic Herald News and the Progress. Now please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, at this time, I'm going to read the guidelines in accordance with Policy 164. This is not a question and answer session, but an opportunity to hear comments from the public directed to the board president. Each person who wishes to make a statement must state their name and address for the record. If it appears this portion of the meeting will last longer than 30 minutes, comments may be limited to 3 minutes each until all others have been heard. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic. District staff members may make a statement except when the issue addressed is subject to remediation by an existing alternative method and/or the administrative chain of command has been previously utilized. Please be respectful of the board, administration, staff, and audience members in the audience. So I basically read these rules, and anyone that is going to speak must be at the podium. There'll be no calling out from seats like last time. If that happens, this is your warning ahead of time. Anyone that speaks out of order will be asked to please exit the meeting. So please, let's all respect each other and let whoever is at the podium speak their turn and wait for your turn. And this way everyone has an equal chance. Okay, so I just want to start out by saying, I know I can't see you guys without my glasses, but I can't read with my glasses. So don't think I'm being annoying, but I just want to start out by saying, over the past several weeks, we have really been trying to come up with solutions to rectify the budget issues, as we all spoke about last time. We created the special meeting because we heard everything that everybody said, and we're trying to do the best we can with this 2% cap that we are unfortunately, our hands are tied upon. And what I really want you guys to understand is, I'm not sure if everyone understands what the Board of Ed is actually allowed to do. So I took this exactly from Angela, where are you? From the New Jersey School Board Association. And it says on the website too? Okay, so I just want to read this statement to you guys. The Board of Ed adopts policies under which the school district operates, oversees the budget, approves the curriculum, hires and evaluates superintendent, represents the public during contract negotiations, and serves as a communication link between the community and the school system. School board members must remember that they have no authority except that which results from participation in discussions of the board during an official meeting. Board members can only appoint, transfer, or remove employees upon the recommendation of the superintendent. Board members are responsible for overseeing the district, not running the district. The superintendent and administrative team are responsible for running the day-to-day operations of the district. The board then can evaluate the superintendent on how well they run the district.
I think the point that Andrea wants to get across to the general public is that everyone knows moving forward exactly the role that's played by the Board of Education. And the Board of Education acts under the recommendations of the administration and the superintendent. That was the purpose of reading the board's responsibility, so that the general public and the community don't think that it's a board member or members that picks and chooses when we have to make difficult decisions exactly who those individuals are.
Well, also I guess to piggyback on what he says, is that we, as a board, hire a superintendent and a business administrator, and they're the ones that make the day-to-day operations as well as where the money's spent, where it goes, etc. We are not allowed to interfere in that. We trust them to make the best decisions that they can, so we just don't want you to think that, you know, we're here on chopping block, because we don't really have
So
the authority to do
the
that.
board can make a recommendation, but ultimately, it's that of the decision of the superintendent. So the board can recommend A, B, C, and D, but if the superintendent feels that that's not in the best interest of the district, then that's exactly what the superintendent does. She acts in the best interest of the district, and it does not have to align with board recommendations. So I think that's important that you guys know, because I know that was a big question at the last meeting, that a lot of the questions were, why is the board members making decisions with this, and how are they coming up with these situations, and you know, what programs and what members should be cut. That's not decided by the Board of Education. It's decided by the superintendent with meetings with the administration. Administration being, I guess, principals and department heads.
So basically, we are here, we hear your concerns, we evaluate them, we speak about them, and then we bring them to the superintendent. So, I guess what we want to share some updates since our last meeting. So the busing now is going to be 100% on the parents, based on future cost and participation. So we're hoping that everybody wants to keep the busing, the subscription busing, and because the less the participation, the costs are going to go up. But that is now going to be on the parents. Unfortunately, we cannot afford to subsidize the busing any longer. So that's going to be 100% on you guys. I heard last time loud and clear that everybody was okay with that, and we decided to do that. So that being said, we don't know the cost yet as well either.
So
That will be, but not May.
we don't want that to be a question asked in this particular meeting, because we don't know. That'll be determined in May when we know enrollment for the buses. There's no definitive formula for us to tell you with any certainty exactly what that number will be without knowing how many people are enrolled and what our tier is going to be with the bus company.
And world language will be kept in the district. So we're not losing the program. We are, I believe, we're just losing a teacher, but the program is not leaving. So the world language program is staying. It's just going to be scheduled differently and worked about in a different way that Sue will handle with her scheduling with her teachers and her staff. We were able to bring back, which we're really excited about, and I hope you guys are too, because this was a big problem. We are bringing back the band and orchestra program by cutting teacher supplies, which was about $33,000. So I'm telling you that we are looking to do fundraising to get this money back into the school for the teachers. So if anyone has any awesome fundraising ideas or would like to spearhead that for me, I'm looking for people, because we have to get supplies to the teachers. And also by reducing a position. Am I allowed to say?
Admin position.
An admin position. Okay, so and just to explain to you a little bit about, we ended up with the BA and the superintendent at the beginning of this whole budget problem. We were looking at losing or cutting 10 positions, and they got that down to 4. So by the time you guys actually heard about it, it was down to 4. It started out at 10. So basically, we're looking at, we listened to what you guys heard, we came back, we are bringing back the band in the orchestra program, world language is staying, but our biggest thing is that you guys know that in November, the question will be on that ballot, and we all have to work as a community to get that question passed. If that question on the referendum does not get passed, we're going to be in even a worse situation next year, which would mean more cuts and maybe larger class sizes. And none of us want that. So it's very important to get the information spread out there in the community, because you know, not everybody comes to the meetings, and most of the time it's us. We have to get everyone out in November to vote yes to those questions.
And just to point out what Andrea said, piggyback off what Andrea is saying, it's a secondary question. It's not a question in regards to a referendum. This is a secondary question specifically for the budget.
And I guess the last thing I really want to add, and I guess this is, and then I'll open it up to questions if nobody else has anything, but I just want you to know that I asked Kathleen specifically because I was curious to know what percentage, because we had a huge increase this year in salary and benefits. And unfortunately, as you know, we're tied at a 2% cap. Benefits went up, I think it was 11%, and I believe salary went up almost 4%. 77% of our budget goes to salary and benefits. So I just want you guys to think about that. If you were to run your own company and you had 77% of your total budget going to salary and benefits, how little is actually left over? And that's why we need these questions to pass.
So just to give you an idea on 77% of the overall budget, health increases from this year to next year and salary increases are north of, correct me if I'm off, on $700,000. Fixed cost, teacher salaries and their benefits, $700,000 increase from this year to next year. These are factual numbers. Everyone in the district, all the employees. So to operate under 2% is nearly impossible.
Okay, so I guess at this point, like I said, please, when you come up, state your name, address, and come up to the podium for any questions on agenda or non-agenda. We don't really have an agenda, so.
Lisa Marchos, 77 Hollywood Avenue. I know you briefly touched upon the items that were causing, the budget to be the deficit, but it's not just health and salary increases. Other districts are facing that as well and not having this problem. Also, are there any specific revenue losses that occurred from last year to the new current year that you're projecting to be a problem? And what other specific line items are causing the budget to be that far off from this year to next year? It's not just salaries. If you could be specific
So the savings to the district, this year, the school board subsidized the busing $372 or $74,000. So that'll be $374,000 that will not be allocated next year towards busing. That's subscription busing. So that's a quick answer. What other line items that are causing a significant financial obligation? We recently had a student move into the district that will have a cost of the district a little over north of $220,000 next year. So that's one student that moved in that we are responsible to educate, that is north of $224,000. So when you take that number coupled with the salary increases and the health benefits, you're way past 2%. Way past 2%.
Good evening. I'm sorry I was late. I just got in from a business trip. Just to piggyback off of Mr. DePascal's comment, we have roughly, let's say, 700 students in the district. And 15% of those students, of the population, is considered classified, meaning they need additional services. So when you look at that number, it's about 105 students. Now, I don't have the actual number.
106.
106.
That's the exact number. That's an up-to-date number.
I don't have the exact budget number. We're going to look at that. But when you look at that with the services that are needed and the amount of influx, I mean, I've been in this town for quite a few years, and the numbers just continue to increase, which is twofold. I mean, it means we have a great program, and parents come here and families come here because of the program that we provide. On the flip side of it, it's additional costs that eat into a budget. So when you have 15% of your student population, needing additional services, that equates to additional staffing, aides, specials, teachers, whatever it may be, and that bites into the main line of the budget also. I don't have the number for you, it's just a number I just came up with tonight on my way in from the airport. So we can come back and give you that number as to what it equates to on the budget, but just to give you an idea, so 15% of the population needing additional services, I'm sure is a lot more than 15% of the budget. I can guarantee you that, but we can have that number for the next week.
Can I reapproach? Hey everyone, thanks for having the meeting tonight. Tyler Masterson, 21 Henrietta Drive. I had a couple of questions. It seemed like at the last meeting, I was unclear how many teachers and staff that were actually impacted at the last meeting. It sounded like you were saying 4, and it sounds like today was still at least 2. So if you could just clarify.
4.
Oh, 4.
4.
So it was 10 last time.
It was 10.
Okay, so we went down to 4. And then, in terms of the additional services, I mean, that is very concerning. I mean, obviously, I understand the regulations that we have to do it. What does the state provide in terms of help in that situation?
Nothing. It's a federal mandate.
Is
State
there
provides.
any grants or
Nothing.
any kind of outside funding that might
Zero.
be able to help with that?
We've exercised that. We've asked that to our specialists on multiple occasions. We're sitting here tonight. 0. It's a federal mandate that we have to follow. And if you would like, I could actually have.
Oh, yeah, the state gives us IDEA, so that number is based on our population. So how many kids we have, there's, our genetic. So that number is kind of given. Anyone coming into the district now, next year's number is already set. So the money that they're going to give us next year is already set. So you might get a little more the following year for new kids coming in, but that's set amount. There's no other. If that doesn't cover it, oh well, we figure it out.
It would be interesting to know, where do we stand in comparison to other districts, I guess, with that many special needs or number of children?
That's a great question.
I got
We
Yeah.
answer for that.
Yeah, North Caldwell
North
has
Caldwell has 13 out-of-district students.
They also have roughly over 100 students, where we have 106, they have 112. So 6 students more than the ascending districts, Essex Fells, we really don't compare us to, and Roseland, I'm unsure. But North Cornwall's actually 6 children, 6 students more than we have.
Okay. And then the last thing, in terms of, I know that you've been running on the 2% budget for several years, and that's a state mandate. Is there any kind of one-time exception that you might be able to ask the town? I know government has one-time exceptions for everything. So is it possible that if you were to go and ask the town for, I think they would give it to you, if there was a way that you can accept it as like some kind of one-time exception?
We believe that when the governor gave the townships that, from the last, first I did the working with towns. From the last meeting, when I mentioned that the governor extended the townships an additional money above their, and they get 2.5%. So when they allowed that, I looked at Kathleen and I said, what's he doing for the school boards? I mean, we're in the same situation. Our operation costs have gone up. We're dealing with inflation and so forth and so on. And I know Kathleen reached out with all the other BAs in the state, sending a letter to the governor, and I believe it pretty much fell on deaf ears, correct?
It might sound like splitting hairs, but even though the state isn't giving it to you, I'm wondering if you can make a request to the town and have the town.
Well, the township we collect our revenue from the township through taxes. The township uses those taxes to also fund their budget. So in order to take money to give to the school district, we're taking away from their budget. So it's like,
Have you asked for a little bit of extra money?
I don't believe so, but I'm not going to say that we can't. But again, if you're working with $1, and I know that dollar is 50 cents goes to the school, and I need 50 cents to run the town, how can the township give me 75 cents and expect
They
it?
seem to have their budget under control, so it's just a suggestion. I'm just wondering if you could take it, if they would be willing to give it.
I'm the liaison between the town.
I think that's worth exploring.
Yeah, I'm the liaison between the town administration and the Board of Education, and I'll make sure that I ask that question for you, Tyler.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
there with, I'll be there with you all.
Hi, Nicole Sudol, 28 Allen Drive. My first question is world language. Will the teachers be taking on that responsibility, or will it be web-based, like other nearby districts do?
No, it'll be provided through a teacher, but not
Web-based.
web-based.
Not web-based.
No.
Okay, so my next question is, I know we want to focus on moving forward, but I still think we need to know why we are where we are with the budget and getting rid of teachers and now bringing back the wonderful music program but taking $33,000 away from supplies. You said if you own a business and 77%, well, I would find more income. I would stop sitting at a 2% cap and say, hey, we have a 2% cap, and bring an elected budget to the community and ask the parents and teachers to hit the ground running to vote for a 2.5% budget. So I really would like to know, and with all due respect, I don't want to hear from anybody else but Dr. Cicatelli, since you just said that's who makes the final decision. Why did we get to this point? When back in 2017, you spoke about, and you, John, spoke about taking away the buses, knowing our budget was getting lower and lower. Yet we gave the parents what they wanted, but the money wasn't going to magically appear. Why did we stay at 2% and every year take a little bit more away, a little bit more away? Because it's very hard to tell my neighbor who doesn't have kids, please vote for our budget. Please pass a referendum. My kids need it. And they say, well, where will this money go all these years? Are they going to take teachers away in 5 years? So why did we not move to an elected budget years ago so we did not end up here, so that doesn't happen again? You were not here during that time, and I mean no disrespect. And it's my understanding Dr. Cicatelli makes the final decision. So I'd like to hear
And I
from you.
think that was misspoken, because when it comes to something like that, I make recommendations to the board. But we do work together on certain things as to what's going to happen. When we were dealing with the busing, I can tell you that the town did not want the busing to go away. The BA, whichever BA that has been here, because I've dealt with several BAs over the past 10 years, plus myself, has recommended to remove the courtesy busing since 2013, okay? But that was something that the town needed and the board didn't want to do. So it was something that they asked us to support and keep it in the budget. So we worked together on certain things for the good of the town as well, right? So that's what we wound up doing. So we kept, quote unquote, finding the money to keep the busing in the budget. Was it a good thing to do? Probably not. But look at what happened last year when we talked about the subscription busing. Everybody was very upset about that, right? Everybody was like, you have to keep the busing, you have to keep the busing. And then we literally kicked the can down the road, and that's what we've been doing for several years. But now we're at the point that that can has hit a brick wall, and we can't keep doing that. And at the last board meeting, everybody said, get rid of the busing. But last year, it was like we were the worst people in the world that we were putting the busing on the community. It's a no-win situation. When there's a change and you're facing issues, people aren't going to be happy. So you try to minimize the damage, okay? But now we're at the point that we can't minimize it anymore. So that's basically what happened with the busing. Did you want to add anything to that?
I just wanted to add that there's a fallacy.
There's a fallacy about going to a budget where you're voting on a budget to exceed the cap. Whether you have an April election or November election, you can't exceed the 2% cap. The mechanism in place is to have spending proposals that are voted on in November. That's how you exceed the cap.
The old system doesn't exist, that you remember where we would present the budget in April.
So when did that system go away? Like, why aren't we allowed to use that system?
The state changed it.
The state changed that format.
Okay, so you have to function at the 2%, but then if you need additional money up to that 2%.
Beyond the 2%.
Beyond the 2%, not up to, beyond the 2%.
Okay, but why didn't we do that? I don't understand. And I get what you're saying. I know we can go back and forth, so I'll stop after this. I get why you need the busing. I personally don't care either way. I can make it work for my family. But if you give, you need to find the money. And we can't just say, well, we gave it to you because you wanted to. You need to say, well, here's how we have to find the money in a way that's sustainable. And I think when you present whatever we're going to vote for, whatever, you need to show us a sustainable way, because this cannot happen again. And the reason doesn't make sense. Yes, you gave us the buses, but you still open your checkbook and you say, well, we're going to run out of money. We need to get more. So I think
we respect that, Nicole, but that's a matter of opinion. You brought up a suggestion about why we don't vote on it. You're suggesting something that the state took away years ago. So I get what you're saying.
it's the same concept. Voting on an elected budget or voting for X amount.
And we would have been in the same place a year ago, with parents here saying, I can't believe we're here, I can't believe we have to vote on this. So this board and this administration is doing everything in its power to move forward to correct anything that's happened in the past. And that's what we're focusing on. Thank you.
Hi, Lauren Mazzaniano, 4 Meisner Court. First of all, thanks to everybody here for having this meeting tonight. I just want to know, to me there's 2 games, right? There's the short game, and then there's the long game, right? You know, to kind of echo some of the things that Nicole was saying, I think she's kind of looking to see what we can prevent from a long game. And, you know, and I think that's what we all need to do. All of us have kids that are going to be in this district for quite some time, and we don't want to wind up here again. To me, the reason we got here, is it important? It is on principle, but right now, with where we sit, it doesn't matter. We're here, right? So, what I'd like to know is, as a community, as parents, as people who want to work together with our teachers who do everything for our kids, day in and day out. They're exceptional, every one of them. My daughter's in 2nd grade, my son is in kindergarten, and I can't say enough about every single teacher and person in the school who has touched my child's life. And I want to continue to have those teachers work to the best of their ability and be in a positive, happy place. And I think we all want that. But outside of that, as community members and as parents, what do you guys suggest that we can do to play the long game here and to make sure that our kids do not go into West Essex at a deficit? It's a major concern for me. I think, I grew up in Fairfield. I've gone through the system. I've also gone through the West Essex system, and it's a real concern. We go in at the bottom generally, and there's a lot of contributing factors to that. I want to make sure that we play the long game well, and we want to support the board and we want to support the teachers. So I'd like to know what we can do as a community, in your opinion, to do that.
I'll start that, because I have actually spoken to Lauren and about the foundation education. I'm going right now on what the parents in the community can do to help out the district. We'll get to the other part later with the long game. And I guess the important part at this point is that we need, as a community, to come together to help that education fund to raise money and to come together and think of creative ways to bring money into the district. And I think it's very important that, there's foundations that support all the municipalities and the police department, et cetera. And I think that sometimes the schools get overlooked. And I think that having a foundation for education is really important because, like she said, I want to piggyback on, I'm here for the teachers and the children. Everybody knows that all of us on the board are here, we don't get paid. We're up here as volunteers. For the last 3 weeks, we've all been sick to our stomachs trying to figure out a way to bring all these programs back. And we love our teachers and we support them. And without our teachers, there would be no education. And without education, there would be no children going to become police officers or firefighters, etc. So I think it's important that we look at this education program foundation and really start to put money back into the schools to fundraise and to find creative ways to bring money back into the district because we're tied at this 2%. And without our teachers, these children would not thrive, and we cannot bring more programs to the school in order to get our kids up to where they should be without this extra money for these extra great programs. So I think that's really important, and I know she's really spearheading this along with, is Lou that started it with you?
Yes.
Yes.
We did all the legwork to get the certification and the state certifications to make sure we actually exist as a legal entity.
Correct. So I think that everybody, I think it really takes, like they always said, it takes a village to raise a child, is that right? Yeah. It takes a village to raise a child, and I think it takes a community to raise great children. And I think we all need to pull together, and it's not really more about who did what or what happened when. I think we need to start from this point, and let's all join together as a community and really pull together and make our schools great again.
And to piggyback off of what Andrea's saying is, it takes the help of the community. It takes the community to show up at the meetings, which are once a month, to really be in the know. And there was talk of, at one time or another, a community outreach program, which, the board has worked on. But there was a lot of misconceptions about the community outreach program, that we were going to choose individuals to go out there and get the general public's concerns and bring them back to us. But that's not what we want. We want the community outreach program to get involved, to have a voice, and then take the information and let the members ask the questions and answer those questions and give the members the opportunity to go back into the community. And I think that speaks volumes. And I say this, every meeting jokingly. HSA's turnout is phenomenal. I'm jealous, and I'm a liaison to that committee as well, but it's 50, 60 women every single meeting. And unless there's a problem in the district, our average attendance is 8 or 9. And it's the same 8 or 9. that religiously come to be part, to be in the know, to question. And in addition to the educational foundation, I think it's very important that the community buys in to the district, to the Board of Education, the teachers, the administration, to have the right information, to be educated when you're back in the community, to say, hey, this is why these things are going on, and this is what we can do to combat the issues that we're having. I think everyone has to get involved. Not just when there's a problem, or when there's a discrepancy, or when there's a disagreement. It's a full-time commitment. It's a full-time commitment for the board members. It's a full-time commitment for the administration. It's a full-time commitment for the HSA. It's a full-time commitment for the police foundation. The problem is, the Board of Education, the governing body of the future of your children, is usually the least attended. That's what can change. That's what the community can do. Take an effort, come 2 hours a month, 9 or 10 months out of the year, because we don't meet in the summer, and buy in. Because we don't want our children to be behind when they grow up. We want to be the example. Right? We want to set the standard. And I think if we all work towards that common goal, we can.
Hi, I'm Lillian Coyle, Sand Road. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I don't have any children in the district, but I just want to see the big picture here and what you're expecting from residents of Fairfield and citizens and parents. You want us to have buy-in, and you want us to pay for the busing, and then you want us to pay for the educational foundation, and you want us to support the HSA, and you want us to spend money for their parties at the end. How much can parents actually continue to give? And I know you guys don't want to hear that we can't go back to figure out what's wrong, but you have to, if you don't acknowledge what happened, you can't move on. You need to, please let me finish.
Yeah, of course.
With that said, also, I feel like it's a sinking ship with the special ed program. You guys just said that you guys have a wonderful special ed program, and that's why everyone or people like to come to Fairfield, and I think that's wonderful. But if you're saying if you're noticing an increase of people moving into the district, that's just going to be more money spent on the children. What happens to the kids in the regular education program? And if the budget doesn't pass, we're going to be left with teachers that are laid off. We are on a sinking ship. This is a continuing cycle. And what happens with the busing? If you don't have a lot of parent input, we as Fairfield, are you mandated to provide busing to students?
So, if that's your last question, I can start by answering that one.
And my other suggestion is that I know you mentioned going to the mayor, but I feel, as you guys acknowledged tonight, that Fairfield is in a very unique situation when it comes to their school budgets. Can you reach out to Mickey Sherrill? She's one of the senators in Essex County. She went to the Montclair ambulance unit. My son works there as an EMT. She was there and she just got grants for them. I think you guys can do more, but you're just not thinking out of the box. And if you tell the media, if you put our situation in front of the media and someone hears about our story, I think it will get coverage. You guys need to do more. You're expecting us to just whip out our wallets and give more, but you guys have been mismanaging our money for all these years.
So I'll start with the busing, okay, and then I'll continue with the busing. The children that are within, outside of the 2 miles, they will continue to get the busing that's offered, that they're obligated to receive. But in the same token that you're up here saying we've been mismanaging the money, we've been paying for the busing, which you haven't been paying for up until last year. So it's a double-edged sword. Now, I'm going to answer each one of your questions, okay? And then before you ask any more, anyone else that wants to go on can, and then you can go for a second round, okay? What went wrong, okay? How did we get here? Well, just the salary increases and health insurance increases from last year to this year takes you outside of 2%. Subsidizing the busing for all these years has definitely been a factor in that, right? So I get it. I'm a parent in this town, okay? I have 2 kids in the school district. I'm heavily involved in municipal alliance and other things. So I see the general public, a lot of the people that are out there, and you were saying you don't have any kids in the district right now, correct? Okay, well, I associate with a lot of the parents that do. And I understand it's a tall S, but it's no taller than 3 softball lessons a week, 6 teams that they play on. Donate to the HSA, not everybody does, nor are you obligated to. And I'm sure it's just a small percentage that go every function, from function to function that raise this money. It's not a big portion of the community. It's a very small percentage that donate more and more and more, right? And I know a lot of them because they're in the audience. So those are several of the things that got us to this point, right? And like I said earlier in the meeting, just the salary increases alone take us outside of the 2%. Salary and health insurance, right? Those are obligations that we can't get rid of. Special ed students, you touched on that. It's unfortunate, but you are correct. General education will always suffer to special education because it's their state and federal mandates, and that's something that
There's nothing you guys can do to ask for more funding for a special ed.
No. I wish we could ask that question a different way. No, there's nothing more we can do. There's nothing, our hands are tied. But we asked that. As a board member, I asked that this morning in a half-hour conversation with Megan, and then touched on it again later this afternoon. I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah.
No, it's not the answer we want to hear. It's the answer that we have to accept. I get it. And busing will be affected outside the box, special education, and what went wrong. Is there anything else that I didn't answer in this particular round of questions?
No, I'm just concerned, so, you plug the hole this year, you plug the hole next year, what happens in the next few years?
You are spot on. And it's the question that the board struggles with every day, saying, hey, tell me where we're going to be next year. And there's a lot of uncertainties. One more student with special needs, we're in a really bad spot.
Yeah. And if the budget gets passed, are you bounded by sticking to what you've been telling us? For instance, if you said, we're not gonna lay off more than 4 teachers, are you bounded by that if the budget passed?
I think that's about proposal questions.
When we go to vote, and it'll tell us what we're voting for. That this money will go for this program, and this money can go to this program. Are you guys bounded by that? What you told the public, or can you change?
No, so that's why there's an exact dollar amount, because we had to figure out what each thing would cost to keep in the budget or to put back into the budget. So what's listed there is what we're bound to.
For that year.
For that
year, and then it can change. Every year changes.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I just want to follow up on that, because that's that's a really important question, especially when you look at, you know, like why did we do something maybe last year, right? We can't just go and say, you know what, it looks like utilities are on the rise. We need to put a question on the ballot to get $50,000 more to fund our utilities. That's not something that we can just put on a question, right? We know it's gonna happen, we've gotta try and deal with it, but that's not a question that we can put on the ballot for you. So when you ask, you know, there's a question on there for bus aids, right? There's been people asking for bus aids. So if that gets approved, we have to hire the bus aides. They have to be on the buses. That's what that money is for. So you can't just, you know, put something as a quote. Let's say we need, you know, X and then go buy Y. It's not going to happen that way. And that's why we didn't go to maybe a question last year just looking at the trend of expenses. Oh, healthcare is going up. Let's put this on. That's not a question that we can go to for a second question. So that's where those problems come. As far as your question about mismanagement, I don't think that's accurate at all.
I apologize for that.
I think we've had BAs that have done a really good job. We've looked at a lot of different things. Since the last meeting, we even called our auditors back in to say, you know, what's happening, what's going on, where are we, what should we have seen, and even peering at the numbers, we found maybe about $80,000. Maybe this should have been here, that should have been there, this should have been there, but that was it. Everything else now that's facing us now is really inflation. Out-of-district costs are up $107,000 of student, and we still have students coming in that are going to be additional. They didn't even make the budget that you saw. We're looking at another $100,000 to $200,000 in out-of-district costs that weren't even in the budget that was modified for our first pass. Operations and maintenance, the daily operations and maintenance of the buildings, utilities, what have you, up $90,000. We only had $577,000 in new revenue. That's what we get based on the state and based on our tax base. That's all we have. When you look at the information coming from the increases in benefits and increases in salaries and increases in special ed and increases in operations, that 577 didn't go anywhere. And if we would have kept, I know there was questions about last week or last meeting about what if we had kept everything, you know, status quo, we barely would cover benefit increases, let alone salary increases. Benefit increases were $400,000. Just right for the benefits, $400,000, $390-something thousand. Out of 577, what's left? Not a lot. And then put everything else on top of that. It's really inflation and not being able to grow either the tax base or the 2%. And it's hurt. That's really where we are. And when you compare us to other towns, you have to look at, everybody wants to say, oh, what did North Colwell do? North Colwell, when they ask for something, they get it. When they have an event, it's packed. The community supports them like crazy. Just is what it is. If we don't get that support, and it's not always going to say, yes, unfortunately, most of the support is going to be reaching into your pocket for something. But that's life. That's just how it is. I don't know it any other way. We didn't pass a referendum. Our buildings didn't get any younger. In the meantime, now we've got roofs, which could have been covered in the referendum, not covered under the referendum. The referendum didn't pass. We have to still do the roof repairs. So that's money that comes from operating, goes into our capital reserve, comes out of capital reserve, goes into those projects. Electrical panels. We're going to be coming up on boilers. We've got to eventually go through. First, we've got to be able to afford the process of another referendum, and then hope that that passes. And if it doesn't pass, in the meantime, still save money to pay for boiler replacements. Because if that referendum doesn't pass and those boilers die, what happens? It's a never-ending battle. It's not mismanagement. It's increasing. It's aging buildings. It's not passing improvements. It's a whole combination of everything. And we talk about the transportation. The transportation costs, even though it's a big number in our budget, currently is one of the smallest increases. Yes, it went up, but it's one of the smallest when we look at the other ones that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of increases. So it's not how did we get here, it's we're here, this is what's happening to us, this is what's happening to everybody, right? You go and how much you pay for milk and eggs, it's crazy. It's happening to everybody, everywhere.
Hi, Rose Luffers, 12 Page Drive. I have 2 comments and a question. I had a bunch of questions after last meeting, so I know you guys all saw them because I copied the board, but I want to thank Kathy for your quick responses. I know it was a lot, so thank you for that and your hard work. I think conceptually where we are is easy, right? We get a 2% increase and inflation is beyond that. So got it. I do want to state though, I am concerned about the future financial stability. And sounds like you are as well, so we're all on the same page and that's great. But next year is not that far away. So even if we plug this hole, your comment was right. My question is for the board, as our trusted elected officials, and in your description of your responsibility to oversee the budget, can you actually make changes to the proposed budget?
We discuss changes. That's what we do. We discuss changes with the superintendent on the budget. We hear her out, she hears us out, we try to find compromises.
Okay, so it's collaborative.
But the final say, if I'm not mistaken, is by our superintendent.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Graciela Beccarella, 386 Talbot Drive. I had sent a letter a few weeks ago. I'm sure you received it. I know I asked for confirmation. I haven't heard back, which is fine. I know there was quite a few questions there. I guess I'm mainly concerned with just what you just said was very helpful, but seeing it. Like, why aren't we seeing what's happening? What has happened? Where we're going? Do we have a 5-year plan? Did we not have that to look forward to? Do we not have savings where we have surplus accounts where we could have somewhat helped us with these unforeseen costs? And my other question is, these 3 proposed questions that we're going for, I know we need the funds, but they're very specific for what they are for and the amounts. But are you mandated to use it for those specific reasons if they're voted on?
Brian just answered that. We just answered
Right.
that. Yes, they are.
Okay, so if it's you're
Yes.
getting bus aids, that money is allocated for bus aids, and that's it. So if we're gonna fully fund the buses, wouldn't we just fully pay, like all of a sudden no pay for the aids, we pay for the buses? Like, are those questions going to be, are they already set in stone, those proposed questions?
Once they're on the budget, on the final budget,
Right.
that's set in stone. And if you approve, so the administration, the way they structured the questions was actually to benefit the community. So it didn't feel like putting all 3 questions in one was
Right.
forcing you as a parent in the
But
district.
shouldn't we prioritize?
Well, it's up to you. It's totally up to you.
Right.
And we're making it up to you, and that's why it was done that way. So if that's your last question, I'll
No, but I'm just saying, as a district, shouldn't we say, like, I know you're giving the parents that choice, and a lot of the stuff that was in there seemed to be like, kind of key, like buzzy words that will catch a parent and say, oh, I want that, and I'm gonna vote that, or.
I don't think
the
I personally
last
don't
one was
think-
employment,
Yeah.
but for what?
I don't think the bus aids is going to pass.
Yeah.
And I think that the administration did a good job by putting them separately and not making the community feel like we're forcing these things down your throat.
Right.
So you want to save these programs or teachers?
Okay.
Vote on them. You want a bus aid?
Right.
Vote or don't.
Right.
You know, as opposed to saying here, it's all or nothing.
Right, absolutely, I understand that.
And yes,
then one of
eventually-
them was just straight, 500K in employment, but for what? We don't have space for hiring really any new staff or letting go of staff. So what is that specifically for?
That's the bus aids. 540.
That's question 3.
That's question 3, yeah.
Was just for the.
Just for the bus aids, it states that, yeah, bus aids, 540.
And then there was another one that just was it said employment. Right.
Yeah, they're not vague where it says just employment. If you can read it to us, we can answer on it.
I could go back and pull it and.
Sure, if you want to.
Read what I was reading.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last board meeting. But what is the board's plan if that doesn't pass? Where does the district stand if those don't pass in November?
You want complete honesty?
Where are
They have to pass. We have to have them pass. The community has to buy in and realize that based upon the 2% cap,
Right.
based upon the inflation, it's choiceless. If you want to be an active participating member in this community, we need it to pass. And the board's going to do everything in their power and is doing everything in their power to work with the administration across the street. And someone made a great point before about the seniors that live next door that, hey, my kids are not in the district. I don't want it. We're going to work with the golden ages. We're going to reach, we personally can get involved to go out and drive home why it's so important that this has to pass. Because you're right, the district needs not a quick fix, a Band-Aid. We need a 2-3 year plan. But here's the best.
But do we have one right
Well,
now?
here's the thing. If one more student comes in, you can
Right.
take whatever planning you have to save an additional $200,000 a year and create that nest egg in savings that you
Right.
spoke of, and it's gone. Because up until 3 weeks ago, a day before our last meeting, we did. We had a $220,000 savings that the administration found that could have been used for other things. And just like that, you're obligated, can't ask the state for help, it's a federal mandate, and you're responsible. So yes, we are. We are looking to save as much money from year to year and make sure it's allocated properly so that we do start a savings, if you will, a nest egg, so that we don't run into these problems.
So we currently don't have any of that. And have we operated with like a 5-year projected budget at all, or like some sort of facilities, like
We have money in capital reserve.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right, and that's something that I think,
Well, that's
we use, but
that's
we're using to
that's-
cover a lot of what the referendum should have done, like that I understand.
Kathleen, what is in the capital?
Capital reserve right now has $1.5 million, but.
So we have been,
And some was allocated.
yeah.
But we also have money that we're withdrawing from capital reserve to fund projects in next year's budget. So I would say around $1.3 million. And with that $1.3 million, it'll be depleted probably in 2 years because we are going to move forward and do the 2 roofs. And roofs are expensive. So it's probably around $600,000. But we did apply, I want this lady to know, for ROD grants in March. So hopefully in August of this year, we'll get confirmation how much the state is going to give us back in money.
Okay.
And the other hard answer to Anthony's answer, the other hard piece of that is when we talked about originally it was 10 and then it was 6 and now it's 4, it goes back to 10. That's what happens if nothing gets passed.
Right,
That's
so
what
we're
happens.
basically just,
Right. If we put the questions out there and the questions don't get asked, and then those questions eventually, what would they do? They expand our tax base, and then the money that we get grows from that, and hopefully that will help us with some of this. So we tighten our belt on one side, we get some additional tax base on the other side, then we can sort of grow on that, and we have a couple of tight years. But if we don't get those answers, the other hard reality that Anthony's talking about is those 10 layoffs materialize. So maybe it's not 10 because we only did 4, but it could be 6.
got it. And then last meeting, I know it was brought up, just kind of getting a true number of what that deficit was for us, and I know it went from like 6 to 9 to 1.6, and that's basically what the proposed question is total. Do we have
Kathleen, do we have a deficit?
No.
Okay.
The rumor was the deficit. It's not a deficit because we submitted our budget to the county office, and our budget was revenues equal to appropriations, and the county office approved it. Now, it's not the type of budget that maybe you had 2 or 3 years ago, because obviously we want to hire back those teachers, but the avenue to go through that is that we have spending proposals, and people looked at those spending proposals last month as if we were doing something wrong, and we were in a deficit because of the amount of money that was on there. This is an alternative to increase our base, as Mr. Egan had said, and that's what we need. We need an influx
Right,
of
but we
money.
were riffing teachers for a reason, and
We're riffing teachers for a reason is because our budgets are based on revenues. And if the revenues are not increasing to the amount, it would be lovely if I'm able to take that tax levy and move it up $1 million. Of course, the community is going to pay for that, but we're not allowed to. We have caps on our tax levy.
Right.
And that's really what the issue is. So for the community would be that you decide on what question you're going to vote on. Question 1, 2, or question 3. That would help us for the future.
And was there a reason why it wasn't just one with what we really need in hopes that you would get back to pass and be have a better chance?
Yes, there was, but it was also because we had a large group of parents ask for that, so we gave them what we asked for. You might not have asked for bus fees, but we had a large group that did. So by not, again, I know I'm repeating myself and I apologize.
No, it's okay.
But if we would have put all 3 questions in one, we would have a room full of people saying, you're forcing these 3 things down our throat. It's unfair and it's unjust. Don't vote for the bus fees.
Right.
Vote for what's important. You're here now, you're asking important questions. Hopefully we're giving you the answers. They might not be the answers everybody wants to hear, but they're truthful answers. And because of that, you make the determination on what's important to you. If bus aids are more important than teachers, then vote for that.
Right, and I understand that. I think that's very nice that you guys have given the option, but I'm just saying as a board and as administration, if we're in dire straits and we need funding for specific things, like what are we prioritizing? Like we haven't had bus aids for I don't know how long. It may be something we want, but is it what we need?
So I hope that the general community is as passionate as you are about our needs. We're explaining them now. I'm not here preaching to you about saving bus aids. I'm here preaching to you about the future of the district and the teachers moving forward. So there's no other way that we can say this is what's the most important to us. You also wanted these other questions on there, so out of courtesy we did it. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely.
Real quick, if I may, I think the confusion is there are 3 questions. You don't choose one of those 3. You can vote all 3.
Oh, I agree.
Okay, all right.
No, I know that. I can vote all 3. My thought process is
That's where the we're asking about prioritizing. That is the priority. If we're putting it out to the community. The last time this budget went, it was brought up earlier, why are we going out to elected budgets like we used to do in the past? And as Mr. Egan mentioned, the laws have changed since then. But the last time that we did that, don't remember how many years ago it was, 15 years ago when they allowed it, was Chris Christie time. So whenever that was. The township actually voted the budget down because it was out there and it was one big budget, here you go. And that back then, the increase was only 1.75. It wasn't even 2%. And the township voted it no. And that's when the board, at the time when we were given the option to go ahead and stay within the state mandate of 2% and then budget your budgets by 2% and didn't have to go out to the township, the board members back then thought that was the best way because at 1.75%, the township voted it no. We had to then go back and cut that budget even lower. So now we're here again where we stay at the 2% as Kathleen mentioned. It's at the budget, it's at the state, it's approved. Now we're coming back for additional questions. We came back with 3 specific questions that will help the school district going forward and then build off of that plan and build off of that base. Like
Mr. Egan stated and Kathleen stated, where now your 2% is built off of a larger base, which will help future funding. So we did it, as Mr. DePascal is saying, here's 3 questions. Vote on what you think is the best. Hopefully, the one that everybody thinks is the priority, with education and the services, gets passed. That helps. If all 3 go through, then that's great, but they're specific as to where they have to be funded. So that hopefully that helps where prioritization is, why we don't do the elected budgets anymore, or what happened in the past. So
Right, it just, some of it would have been nice to see that we were maybe enhancing the curriculum or academic rigor for the kids. A lot of it is just, that would be nice to see, just some of it going directly to our children and their education. And then I guess lastly, what you were saying before was very helpful about we're dealing with a lot of inflation, and I understand that. And we're not the only district, I'm sure, that's faced with this. But at the same time, are we ever going to see some sort of representation as far as numbers and where we're at? I mean, we were throwing numbers out with insurance.
Next week.
Oh, okay.
That'll all be next week.
But that's the budget that you're looking to fully pass, so we're not gonna see anything prior to that as far as, I know you did the preliminary last month, but we really didn't see much there. That was a lot of, so nothing really until next meeting. Okay,
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lee Sherrod, Washington Drive. Forgive me because I'm not familiar with the technical operations of the school board. I know that this question was raised before and that creating a budget is a collaborative effort, but my question is, who has final approval? And then my other question is, with these issues that are put on the ballot, who has the final approval of what gets put on the voting ballot?
So, Sue, our superintendent, Dr. Cicatelli, has the final say on the budget.
Actually, county superintendent.
County superintendent.
Has the final say on the budget.
So the board can vote the budget down, and then it goes to the county superintendent. And the county superintendent then talks directly with the business administrator and the superintendent, not the board, and can approve the budget.
So it's our superintendent, unless it's voted down and then it goes to the county.
Yes.
Okay,
And,
great.
and the county doesn't come and sit with the board and say, why was this voted down? The county sits with the business administrator and the superintendent and says, okay, review this with me, and then they have the final say with no input from the Board of Education. So to answer your question, the board has no say. The board can make a recommendation, we work with the superintendent to give suggestions, but ultimately, it's either the superintendent or the county superintendent.
And then what about the items on the ballot? Who has the final determination about what items go on the ballot?
That's a collaboration, if I'm not mistaken, between the Board of Education and the administration.
But the questions have to be approved.
But the questions have to be approved, yes.
By the board?
County office.
County office.
But the
Okay,
board
so-
also approves them
Yeah.
first.
When you say the board, you mean yourselves, Dr. Cicatelli, the BA, everyone makes a recommendation and then together you submit it.
And then it goes to the county and the county approves it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jennifer Valenti, Vanessa Mayor, FBA Co-President. Our question is really a clarification one. We have been really working hard to try to disseminate correct information to our members. So we wanted to clarify that band and orchestra is reinstated. Is that full-time?
Yes.
Okay. And the second thing was about administration. There was an administrative difference coming that was changed. Could we clarify what
Sue, do you want to touch on that? Or is it?
No. I put a cut in that is an administrative cut that is helping to bring back the band program. That is going to bring it back part of it.
And we'll be privy to that information
Going forward here.
next, in the next one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Lamort for Susie Lane. Thanks everybody for, obviously, you guys are volunteers and I appreciate everything you do. 2 comments or suggestions. I'm concerned that not enough people know what's going on in the town. I don't know, older people who are not golden agers or involved, like my parents live in town, they only know from what I've told them what's going on in the district. I think they would support, our property values and everything is based on how good our schools are. So I think we need to do a little bit better job of communicating. I know you're working on that, but part of the thing I think with that last referendum, some unknown source sent out that mailer that had a lot of bad information, or whatever it was. Can we do some kind of something in the mail to the taxpayers or something like, hey, here's what's going on in the school. Here's where we are. Our budget is 700,000, 7 whatever the number is of benefits. People need to know this because I think we all understand there's issues, but there's a lot of people who aren't involved in all those things that don't really know what's going on. Some kind of the town does it. They'll put something in the mailer saying, hey, this is what we did last year, our budget. So I think we should be doing that. And Dr. Cicatelli, are you talking to other superintendents? Like I know, we're lucky in here because we have West Essex, and I know the other districts, North Caldwell, they're doing really well. West Essex is doing well. Are you talking to other superintendents? Because everybody in the state has the same issues I'm sure we have, but they're not in the dire straits that we are. So is there any discussion going on?
There's always collaboration. We have roundtable meetings with the county once a month, but even our consortium group, we try to get together often and discuss certain things. I had talked to them about their budgets. They're in a better spot than we are. I had asked them if they were going over their 2%. None of the districts that are in our consortium are going over the 2% this year. They didn't feel the need that they had to, so they were fortunate. But to try to talk about some revenue issues, things that we can help to try to bring into the district, those are things that we're discussing as well, to try to see what we can do to make our budget a little bit stronger.
Okay. All right, great. And then, like I said, we're all, we want to support, we love the teachers, that they're the lifeblood of our organization. Everybody here and our kids are, better as a result. But I think that's the thing when you guys take this back. Really focus on how we're going to talk to everybody. And I'm going to talk to as many people as I know about this, but I do think that we have to find a better way to communicate. And maybe it is through mailers. I'm in sales, but you can't just do it once. You got to do it a couple of times. And we have time between now and November, so let's really, I think it's a good opportunity.
So just to touch base on that, right? So we moved our meetings to town hall to try and get on TV. Again, we want to be out there, but we don't want to really have a lot of costs associated with it. Mailers would be a great idea, but mailers would cost us money. So we do email blasts to who we can. We've had some conversations trying to figure out how do we reach, non-parent residents, through emails or texts and how to solicit those phone numbers and things like that. But that's one of the reasons why we moved our meetings to town hall, was so that it can be on the channel and people can find us and hopefully figure that out. The other thing is it's very tough to compare districts if you're not at the same budget size, right? Because if I have a $50 million budget and I'm getting a 2% increase, and I have a $12 million budget and I'm getting a 2% increase, there's significant differences in those increases. There's significant differences in the budget lines. And I hate to use this term, but for the sake of an easy conversation, there's a lot of places to hide money in a $50 million budget than there is a $12 million budget. So, yes, other districts are doing different things, but it's really careful. You have to be really careful to compare the same size budgets, the same size districts, just because, again, there's not a lot of money to go around. Like I said, our budget's $12 to $13 million. We have $577 of new revenue this year. That's not a lot of money compared to somebody who has a $30 or $50 million budget.
And you got to apples to apple. I mean, I grew up in Livingston. It's way different, and great education. You can't compare. I agree, apples to oranges. And about the mailer cost, I mean, I own 2 businesses. I do every door direct mail. I blanket the entire town for a very inexpensive amount of money.
So, I was.
You're on the hook for next mail.
I'll help you. I know how to do it.
So, I was going to jump on that. Brian beat you to it. In addition to the TV station, we actually went live, during COVID, and then stood with that. But I think more importantly, what you just said, and what I was going to touch up with Brian said is that the Board of Education and the administration are not permitted to, by our governing laws, to actually campaign to solicit anything. But the community outreach program or the educational foundation can. So that's something that, you know, like you, I'm in business. I know it costs very little to blanket the entire town. Unfortunately, that's not something that we can fund or initiate. But the community outreach program and the educational foundation can, and it's a great idea. But the whole preface of the community outreach program and the people that we spoke to and the people we're going to move forward with are going to be those individuals that sit with us, give us their opinions, listen to exactly what's happening tonight. You know, calm, intellectual dialect, you know, back and forth, questions and answers in a professional, respectful manner, and then take that information back, right? Because, you know, to touch on some of what was said earlier, Nicole had a great, you know, suggestion earlier, but she was just not aware that the state did away with that. Right. You know, it's a great idea. Hey, why doesn't the board just do a mailer? Well, we can't. You know, and I think these are the things that we need the community outreach program for, and it not just for a referendum, but something that's you know, a living, breathing thing throughout the entire school year, because a lot of things, you know, happen within a year. So the outreach, the educational foundation, those are all, you know, avenues that, you know, we'd like to utilize, you know, as best as we can. Thank you.
Alan Pierce, 15 Cold Street, an old board member, and you can't find a lot of money in $6 million budget. On the buses, so you're going to do away with the busing for, then the town would have to pick up the crossing guards and all that?
No, we're not doing away with busing. We're doing
anything over 2 miles, under 2 miles.
We're there now.
We're there now.
Right.
Yeah. We're there now. It's subsidized.
It's subscription busing now.
Right, people are paying for the busing.
Some people are, other people aren't.
Right. So if, as a town, we would have to hire crossing guards, right?
No.
They hadn't.
No, if you did away with busing and then people didn't want to pay for the bus.
We can't do away with...
To 2 miles.
We can't do away with all the busing.
Right.
Never.
Right. But you can do away with the courtesy. The courtesy busing you can do away with.
Courtesy busing we offer. It's not that we're doing away with it.
No, but if you're, you know, you're making people pay for it.
Yes.
Now. And if they didn't want to pay for it, they would have to, the kids would have to walk.
Which is what they do now.
Right. But then there's no crossing guards now.
Correct.
So that's up to the town.
Correct.
Right? So the town would have to pay for that. So if you're going to negotiate with the town, you go, it's probably cheaper for them, and you also get paid, right?
But we did that last year. That was last year's discussion.
Yeah, but, you know, for a taxpayer, I don't know how many crossing guards you would need in Fairfield. Probably a lot of them. How much would that cost?
They don't need, they haven't had the need from the police
I know,
department
but
has been monitoring
people
that.
say, I want to pay for buses.
They have. Some people, not everybody pays
No,
for
I
busing.
understand that, yeah. So this would help the town too, to keep the busing, because it's probably cheaper to keep busing than have 10, or I don't know how many crossing guards you would need. A lot.
We went through that discussion last year when we changed to the subscription busing.
Right.
And we expected that there would be
So I'm just saying, maybe you can talk with the town and say, hey, look.
Right, we did that when we got rid of this, when we got rid of courtesy busing a year ago.
Right.
Right, we went to the town and said, this is where we're at, this is where we're short, we're short X amount of thousands of dollars, we're gonna have to switch to busing. It may create issues because of sidewalks and crossing guards and traffic and whatever. And basically the town was like, yes, we're aware of this, we're monitoring it, we're thinking about it. The police department has done a great job at the beginning of the school year, extra monitoring to see what was happening and who was walking and where were they walking and how many cars were being picked up. I believe our officers keep daily track of cars coming in and out of the properties and things like that. So they're aware of all that, and it's going on now.
But let's say you have to cut
It
back.
may increase because of the possible increase in costs for next year, but it is happening. It's happened since January.
Do you have any more retirements of teachers retiring? Oh,
Don't know yet.
Not this year, but.
not yet. Because now you have a legal reserve.
You have, what do you mean by legal? We have fund balance reserve.
There was one in your budget, something about legal,
Yes.
and that was like over $1 million or something? No?
We need a legal reserve over $1 million.
No, I
We
know.
don't have
It
it.
was, one of your budgets showed it, plus the capital.
Without knowing what particular line item the legal budgets,
You might be referring to capital reserve.
capital reserve, yeah.
No, that was, yeah, that you had.
You can't commingle funds.
No, I understand that, I'm just saying, so you had, you bought these buildings right in the back here, and that was about $500,000 or more?
Yes.
And that came out of capital reserve, and now you still have, what, 1.6?
We have $1 million, with next year appropriating money withdrawn from it, we'll probably have $1.3 million. And as I said before, we're also going to do 2 roof projects in next year's budget, which will dwindle that down to about $600,000.
And then we have to build it back up because we've got boilers and other things that.
And these were all things that.
We went through the same thing, we always had interest account, but how long, the 2% has been out there for how many years?
Since 2013.
13.
13 years.
13 years.
Like when you were on the board, you might remember how we would put like special ed money aside.
No, I know, yeah,
Right.
that's true, if you get a move in.
No, right, so we would budget for that, right?
Right.
So probably back when you were on the board, we were probably doing like 3 positions, just in case somebody would come in. So a few years later, that goes down to 2 positions, because now costs came up, or maybe even somebody came in and we can't afford the 2 positions, then you're down to 1 position, and then you're paying it all out, and then you get like a surprise that we just got less than a month ago of an astronomical case. And it's just, it's.
But there's always extra money in the budgets at the end.
There used to always be extra money in the budget.
Before an 11% inflation rate, there used to be.
Even our fund balances are capped
So
now.
now we don't have any padding, we left.
No. Although they would always tell us there was nothing there, and then at the end of the year, it was very money. And so I'm surprised that there's no money there.
Fingers crossed, Mr. Pierce, that's what we're hoping for. But is anyone else interested that has not spoken?
Hi, I'm Harrison CC, 5 Victorian Lane. So you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that originally 10 positions were going to be cut due to budget, and now after reevaluating, 4 positions will be cut. Is that correct? I'm just curious as to what of those 6 positions will be reinstated. Is it possible, I know you can't probably give out people's names, could you give the positions that are going to be reinstated?
That will be discussed at next meeting.
Okay. And as far as what I was going to say, as far as meeting the only position cut, this is the continuation, is band and orchestra, is that right? Okay. And I just want this to be clear too, that when the budget is going to be passed in November, or that we have to vote on,
That's the additional items. The budget will be passed, or the budget will be appropriated at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay? And then whether we pass it or the superintendent and the county superintendent pass it, that will be the budget that's passed. That's how we'll be going forward. The vote for the additional questions will affect the second half of that school year.
Right, so the 4 positions that have not been reinstated, that if it is passed, or whatever is voted on in November.
Question.
Right, the question, if that is passed, those 4 people will 100% be reinstated for their positions.
In January.
In January.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that hasn't had an opportunity to speak? Tyler, since you walked up first. Nicole.
Okay, I just wanted to go after the gentleman, Tyler Masterson, 21 Henrietta Drive. because it kind of is related to the busing, I dare say it. My question is, and I know that we're not going to know these numbers until next year, but I would imagine that the pricing per student is going to go up significantly. You know, I think we're paying like $1,000 a person now. You know, if there are 60 people on the bus times 5 buses times 2 schools, and then you divide $375,000 by that many riders, I mean, it's going to put the per person rider price at like $7,000. I think that's going to basically outprice most people in town. So I don't think that we're going to probably have subscription busing next year.
I think currently it's $40-some thousand a route, and that's basically $1,000 a seat. But then we offer tiered discounts for multiple children in a family. So probably the first bigger impact that you will see, and again, this is all hypothetical because we don't have the numbers, but the first, you can't necessarily plan to fill a bus because you have to leave a little bit of room. So somewhere around 45 or so students would be on a bus that can squeeze 54. So somewhere around 45 students is what they usually plan on in the math equation for the bus. It's about $42,000–45,000 a route. We don't know where that pricing will go. Again, it will also depend upon participation. So that is about $1,000 a seat.
Not $7,000.
That's what we pay now.
You pay that for one.
For one.
But if you had more children, you would pay less for those other children.
But that's the price now with the $375,000 subsidization that the district was paying.
If I'm not mistaken, we're not paying $1,000 now. We're paying $600 for the first child.
No family's paying more than $1,000. So if you have 3 children, you're maxed out at $1,000 right now.
It's not
But it's
$1,000.
my understanding that the board is, the district is paying $375,000 towards the subsidized busing portion, right? And that's now been on the parents. So these costs per person are gonna go up a lot. So to the point where I don't know, I don't feel like we're gonna be able to continue subscription busing. I don't think the parents are gonna pay for that.
It's really going to depend on that route price that we get based on participation.
It would never be $7,000 a child.
So who's going to pay the $375,000 that is being reallocated into the new
It's
budget?
going to come out of the difference between what you're paying, the $1,000, and the difference for the other children that were in your family that weren't paying that $1,000.
So if you're second and third child at a discount, they're no longer getting a discount. If you have 3 kids and it's $1,000, it's $3,000 for busing.
But was the board not subsidizing part of that? And this year, and next year, now you won't be. Next year, you won't be.
We are. That's why you're not paying the full amount.
Right now.
Right.
Next year, you said that the full amount is going to be on the parents.
Yes.
So that full amount is going to take into consideration the $375,000 that the district is currently subsidizing.
Correct.
So that brings, for next year, brings the per rider price up substantially to the point where I'm not expecting there's going to be a massive interest in subscription busing next
It's
year.
going to be a substantial, yes. It's going to be $600, $700, $800 in addition to what you're paying now.
And I think that's reasonable. But if you were to take the $375,000 mark and divide it by the riders.
Yeah, because you don't know the amount of riders that we have, so you can't make a determination.
So, I guess to get to the next point, we'll see where that price is when we get there. But one of the questions was to put aids on these buses. When do those questions need to be finalized and submitted? Because if you don't get enough subscription riders next year, there may not be a bus for these aids to go on. So what does that timing look like?
The question's already been submitted, it's already been approved. So
But if you don't have it, if you don't get subscription busing next year, you don't need aids.
Understand, but if the state is telling you that we have to propose a question by this date, and if we don't propose a question, then we're gonna go with an assumption that we don't know what the answer is, and all of a sudden the assumption is incorrect, where we have everybody who wanted to be bused, is gonna be bused, and we didn't provide that question, well now we can't give that. But what we did is we said, okay, you know, this is a concern, a priority for some, we put that out there. If, for whatever reason, the numbers don't come back and then there's no need for the busing, well, then that question can be removed.
No, so just
Yeah, we have to make the assumption that we're going forward with busing.
Because keep in mind, the question's not until November.
But for the,
And they're still mandated busing for 2 months.
Right,
So
understood.
my guess would be that there would be a calculation completed and saying, well, if the subscription busing wasn't done, but people still paid, the question passed for aids, it would be aids on the buses that are mandated, and that would be X amount of dollars, and we wouldn't collect the other amount of money in taxes.
so just to manage what people might expect next year, is we're not looking at thousands of dollars increase per rider, maybe under.
Around $1,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Not increase. Not increase.
No, increase.
Increase.
Increase, yes. Increase to $1,000. Yes, 384 riders, yes, increase to 1,000. Anyone else that hasn't had an opportunity to speak that would like to? If not, Nicole, I know you have your hand up.
I don't remember anymore.
I will. Chief Anthony Manor from the Fairfield Police Department. How's everybody doing? As you may or may not know, I'm a product of the Fairfield school systems, grew up here my whole life. And I've heard mentioned that we have a very successful police foundation, and we do. We thank the generous supporting of our businesses and our residents. And we look at, they support our endeavors, they also support the charities that we favor, if you will. Our police officers every year also are permitted to wear a beard during the months of November and December, provided they make a contribution, again, towards charities that we like to support. So in looking at this, the Fairfield Police Department could think of no better charity to try to support than our teachers and our students. So we'd like to make a contribution of $1,000.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief.
That's a great community.
This is Marsha. I just want to clarify that, so at the next meeting, when the budget is going to be presented to be voted upon, that's when you're going to actually do line items for individual accounts to show? Can you also show what the amount was this current year as opposed to the upcoming budget? I think that's going to be very helpful in trying to get your proposals passed. So people can see specifically where your dollar items are. Because if I'm understanding correctly, the biggest increase is in salaries and benefits and special education services. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct. I think that's very helpful for people to see how much exactly that is going to be costing.
And that is a fixed cost.
Correct.
Lisa, so it's verbatim, this is what it was, and this is where it's going to be.
But I think people need to see that because potentially, from what I'm hearing you
Hundreds
say,
and hundreds of
about
thousands.
$400,000 in special education services in an increase from last year to this year, is that correct?
North of 340 and salaries and benefits, north of 700, so $1 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions, comments? Okay, at this time, well, our next board meeting will be Wednesday, the 26th, April 26th, at the Fairfield Municipal Building, again at 7:30. If there's no further business before the board, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Roll call.
Ms. Saraswat? Yes. Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger? Yes. Ms. Straw?
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.